Sloan, a 36-year-old financial director and the responsible eldest daughter, has supported her retired parents and her younger sister Bailey for years. After installing security cameras due to neighborhood break-ins, Sloan discovers her sister and brother-in-law Garrett have been entering her home using a spare key and stealing her belongings. When Sloan confronts them, they dismiss it and her parents side with Bailey, calling it family sharing. Sloan reports the thefts to the police. Her parents pay restitution to avoid charges. Sloan cuts financial and emotional ties and begins building a healthier life with therapy, boundaries, and independence, refusing to return to the old dynamic. The first ping came in the middle of a numbers war. Conference room, glass walls, the city slicked in late sun outside. Sloan's projection glowed with columns and forecasts. If we move the discretionary to Q3, we can cover CAPEX without touching reserves, she said, pen tapping once. A motion alert slid across her phone, quiet as a whisper. Front door, activity detected. 2:47 p.m. She didn't look. Not at first. She hated being that person in meetings. The pen stilled, something in her body already knew. Another alert stacked underneath the first. Living room, activity detected. Thoughts? Her VP asked. Give me 2 minutes, she said, stepping to the window, turning the screen toward herself like she was shielding a flame. The app opened to a tidy grid, front step, entry hall, living room, hall to the bedrooms. The feed jumped to life. A hand with a familiar tiny crescent moon tattoo slid a key into her lock. The door swung inward. Bailey walked in with the practiced ease of someone returning home, sunlight catching on a laugh that didn't touch her eyes. Garrett followed, chuckling, plastic grocery bag swinging at his side. Sloan's reflection in the glass hovered behind them, pale and still. They didn't hesitate. Bailey's shoes were off before the door closed. She set her bag down, tucked hair behind her ear, and headed down the hall that led to Sloan's bedroom. Garrett drifted toward the living room shelves, thumb skimming spines of books he'd never read. Everything okay? The VP asked from behind her shoulder, careful, not prying. Fine, Sloan said. She was not fine. Her mouth tasted like metal. She watched her sister enter the bedroom frame, watched those hands that Sloan had held steady over a wobbling bicycle handlebar slide hangers down the rack with the efficiency of a boutique clerk. Bailey lifted a cashmere sweater, turned to an off-screen partner like a host to her audience. Garrett's shoulder popped in frame, a grin, a low whistle. Something inside Sloan folded in on itself with a soft, terrible sound. The second ping, bedroom, activity detected. She ended the feed. She ended the meeting. I'm sorry, she told the room, the words thin and precise. I need to step out. In the elevator, Sloan pressed her palm to the cool metal rail to stop the tremor. She counted her breaths. On 1, she was a daughter who paid her parents' utilities because their voices thinned at the end of the month. On 2, she was a sister who wired rent when the texts came in with emojis instead of punctuation. On 3, she was a woman who now had video of that generosity being gnawed to the bone. When the elevator doors opened, the lobby was a clean slice of quiet. She stood there for a full minute, her phone heavy in her hand, the red dot on the live feed blinking like a heartbeat. Somewhere, her bedroom closet door slid softly against its frame. Somewhere, laughter. Sloan didn't run. She never did. She organized. She booked a rideshare anyway. On the way, the city blurred. Power lines cut the sky into reasonable proportions. Her mother's voice rose from memory, warm, brisk. We're so proud of you, baby. You always know what to do. Her father's laugh. Bailey's teenage texts. Can you please help me just this once? It had never been once. At a red light, the app flashed again. Bedroom, item removed. Sloan's thumb hovered above record. Then she pressed it. The feed rolled silent. Everything that would undo the life she'd been keeping upright for years began with a key turning in a door. 2 weeks earlier, the house had not been accusing. It had been merely wrong in small ways. A coffee mug 2 inches to the left. Pillows with their seams facing the ceiling. A faint perfume that wasn't hers and a micro-scratch on the brass tray where she kept rings she wore on weekends. She'd stood in her kitchen, hand on the counter's cool edge, listening to the house breathe. She'd laughed at herself then, a soft exhale to break the spell. True crime brain, she'd muttered, shaking it off. The cameras had seemed like prudence. The neighborhood group chat had been a chorus of doorbell videos and grainy silhouettes. The installer had a kind face and competent hands. Full coverage, he'd said, and she had nodded like a person who could afford not to worry. It had felt good. Measurable. For outside, for inside. Angles tucked like chess pieces. Cloud storage like a second memory. Her life, too, had been tucked in neat squares. Spreadsheets of budgets, a calendar of paydays, auto transfers timed to hit just before late fees would hiss to life. The first of the month, parents' utilities, $310, split across gas and electricity. The 7th, groceries for them, a little extra because they'd never buy berries otherwise. The 12th, Bailey and Garrett's rent, just until we stabilize, which had turned to a routine so silent it felt like plumbing. She didn't think of it as sacrifice. She thought of it as water finding its lowest point. She didn't have children. She had a neat little 3-bedroom that she kept clean because no one else would. She had a title, financial director. A directness. A quiet pride that came from never missing. When the first thing went missing, she went through the stages of a reasonable person. Search. Retrace. Blame the donation bin she'd hauled to the trunk last spring. She pictured her silver handbag in the hands of a college student walking into a first interview, which almost made it okay. She told herself she had a habit of putting things somewhere safe and losing the map. But the watch wasn't logical. The watch was in its box. The box was in the desk. The desk was where it had always been. She had opened the drawer like she was opening a familiar story and found a blank page instead. She did what she does when the world refuses to balance. She sat with a legal pad. She made 2 columns, lost/possibly donated. Under lost, her pen hovered longer than felt normal. She underlined it twice. Later that night, she FaceTimed her mother while decanting pasta water, wanting to talk about anything else. Her mother described a magazine recipe she'd clipped 20 years ago and still made every winter. "We had it last week," her mother said. "But I forgot the nutmeg, can you believe?" They both laughed. The sound was easy. It skated along the surface. "Do you still have the spare key?" Sloane asked when the steam fogged the screen. "Of course," her mother said. "For emergencies." "Right. How's our Bailey?" her mother added, voice gone gently careful. "Working," Sloane said, which was both true and not. Working the conversation, working the margin of what was allowed, working the angle. In bed, the house creaked like an old friend. Sloane told herself she was safe because she had made it so. She slept with the phone on the nightstand, the app icon like a small, obedient eye that would blink if it needed her. It blinked on a Wednesday at 2:47 p.m. After the ride home, Sloane didn't storm in. She let the footage spool out. She watched herself not be there. Bailey took the sweater. Then a silk blouse that still smelled faintly of hotel soap and a conference in Denver. She shrugged into Sloane's coat and tipped her chin at the mirror, her mouth curving at herself. Garrett ghosted fingers across the living room speakers, checked the liquor shelf, paused on a good bottle like a man examining another man's hand. The worst of it wasn't the things. It was the soundless choreography. Familiarity so confident it looked like ownership. She saved the clip. She scrubbed the timeline back 2 weeks, then 3. It was all there, the history of a theft made domestic. The watch lifted, a small, reverent theft. The handbag tried on like a dare. The medicine cabinet opened. The laundry room rifled. A bottle of wine tucked casually under an arm. She organized it the way she knew how. 12 incidents, time-stamped. A simple sum. 10,000. Maybe more. She did not add labor for betrayal or interest on trust. That evening, she drove to her parents' small house first. She parked 2 blocks away and walked. The hydrangeas were gray sticks in the winter bed. The porch light clicked on as she stepped up. Her father answered in slippers and relief. "Pumpkin," he said. Surprise. He opened his arms, and she went into them because she always had. He smelled like laundry soap and coffee. The living room was a familiar map, the crocheted throw, the glass bowl full of keys and rubber bands, and a dented tape measure. Her mother came out in a sweater she'd owned for a decade, face alight. "What a nice, do you still have my spare key?" Sloane asked, gentle, like asking after a casserole. Her mother blinked. "Yes, of course. Can I see it?" Her mother frowned at the shape of the question, then turned to the bowl. She dug until the keys sang against each other. "Here," she said, and offered the small square of metal on a cheap ring. There were two. One with a little pink tag that said Sloane. One with a little blue tag that said spare. "Why are there two?" Sloane asked. "For your father," her mother said, as if it were obvious. "In case I misplace mine." Sloane held them in her palm. The metal was warm from her mother's hand. "Anyone else have a copy?" "Bailey had one years ago, when she watched The Cat," her mother said. "We needed to get in when you were traveling that week. I think she returned it." She tilted her head. "I can ask." "Ask." The word laid down like a card between them. Sloane nodded. "Please ask." Her father cleared his throat. "Everything okay, Pumpkin?" She smiled the way she'd learned to smile when delivering bad news in pleasant packaging. "I'm shoring up some gaps." On the way out, she slipped the keys back into the bowl. She paused with her fingers on the edge of glass, then let go. At home that night, she did not pour wine. She drank water and watched the red dot of the hallway camera blink like a lighthouse. She thought about spare keys multiplying, about how love is often permission until it rots into entitlement. She thought about emergencies that had quietly been expanded to include wants. The twist wasn't that Bailey had stolen. The twist was that everyone had made space for it, the way you make a path around a broken step you promised to fix. She invited them to dinner because she still believed in rooms where words can do work. The table was modest, pasta with crushed tomatoes, basil she tore by hand because the knife felt too sharp for something like this. She set a bottle of wine down and didn't open it. She lit a candle, then blew it out again. Too soft. Too forgiving. When the doorbell rang, she kept them waiting for a count of 5. She opened to Bailey's perfume and Garrett's grin and a grocery store cake in a plastic dome sweating under the warm kitchen light. "Sloane." Bailey's voice all bells. A hug that brushed Sloane's shoulders with the efficiency of a windshield wiper. Garrett's tap on the doorframe like a dog peeing on a corner. "Looks good," he said, sliding into a chair without being told. His knee bounced under the table in a restless rhythm. They ate. Forks against plates were the loudest thing in the room. "How's work?" Sloane asked Bailey, because she was not ready to start the fire yet. "Good," Bailey said. "We're between accounts." Her smile dimmed to something practiced. "Marketing is cyclical, you know?" Then the quick pivot. "You look tired. Are they working you to death?" Sloane took a breath. "Some of my things have gone missing." A silence. Not shocked. Not quite. "What kind of things?" Bailey said, careful. "A silver handbag. A watch. A few pieces of jewelry. Wine. Shoes. A sweater." She looked at the sweater on Bailey's back, green, soft, familiar. "Wow," Garrett said, low whistle. "Bummer." "You misplace stuff all the time," Bailey offered quickly, almost relieved to have a script. "Remember the keys in the refrigerator?" A laugh, light as if they were actors in a rerun. "That was 14 years ago," Sloane said. "Well," Bailey said. "Still." Sloane placed her phone on the table face down, like a card. "I installed cameras. Neighborhood break-ins." Bailey's eyes flicked to Garrett. It was small, but it was there. A bird changing direction mid-flight. "You're not supposed to film people without telling them," Garrett said, a smile that wasn't a smile. "That's illegal." "In my own house, it's not," Sloane said. "And even if it were, the theft is still the theft." Bailey's fork clicked against her plate. "We're family," she said, like it was a spell. "You've always said what's mine is yours." "I've never said that," Sloane said, quiet. "I've said I can help." "That is not the same sentence." Garrett leaned back. "You make more than us. You don't even have kids. You buy $500 sweaters. $800 bag," Bailey murmured. "Prada," it felt surreal. The way people narrate their own crimes. I want everything back, Sloan said. Or 10,000 to cover what's gone. You have a week. After that, I file a report. Bailey's mouth opened. Closed. Opened. You're not serious. I'm serious. You would call the police on your own sister. She said it like a dare, like an old story would leap up and cover the new one. Yes. Garrett laughed, a sharp bark. You won't. Sloan placed the phone upright and pressed play. The table filled with the silent image of Bailey at Sloan's closet, the tilt of a head, the smiling mouth, the sweater lifted like a prize. The candle wick, unlit, curled at the center of its own absence. Bailey watched herself on the screen, then shoved her plate away so fast the fork skittered. You're disgusting, she said, voice suddenly raw. Spying. Sick. Get out, Sloan said. No heat in it. No performance. Just a boundary with a lock. They left. The cake dome sat sweating on the table. The house exhaled. Sloan sat very still, listening to the absence of their steps. A week would be 7 days long no matter what. Day 7 dawned with a text, "You're bluffing." She drove to the police station anyway. The fluorescent light was indifferent. The desk officer was younger than the shirts in her dry cleaning. I have a report, Sloan said, and then she did the hardest thing she'd done in years. She said everything out loud. He watched the video. He asked for addresses. He said words like restitution and recovery and evidence chain. She signed where he pointed. She walked back into daylight feeling smaller and larger at once, the way the sky feels when a storm breaks. At home, she changed the locks. The locksmith's drill sang against the metal, hot and bright. Lots of folks switching out this week, he said conversationally, not knowing he was narrating a different crisis. Handing over the new keys felt ceremonial. She did not make spares. At 6, the door shook with her father's fists. Sloan, he shouted, voice cracking in a place she'd never heard. Open this door. Her mother wept on the stoop, her sobs percussive, a rhythm from childhood she had always responded to. They're in custody, her mother cried. Your sister. My baby. Sloan stood on her side of the door with her hand on the new knob and did not open it. They took from me, she said. This is what consequences look like. You're cruel, her father said, the words spit like a seed. This is family business. It stopped being family business when you made my house a store. Do you want us to pay? He shouted finally, the last card. Is that it? You want money? I want accountability, she said. 10,000 covers the things. It won't buy back the trust. There was a sound like someone sagging against wood. This isn't you, her mother said, a prayer. It was always me, Sloan said softly. You just liked me better when I was useful. Silence gathered. Then shoes on steps, retreating. 2 hours later, her phone chimed. Transfer received. $10,000. At the station the next morning, she withdrew the complaint. The officer nodded. They'll be released soon, he said, not making it celebratory. She went home and did the next set of things that felt like betrayal and felt like breath. She canceled auto transfers. She unsubscribed her life. She put her phone in a drawer and left it there long enough for the house to fill with the sound of its own systems. The refrigerator hummed, the heater ticked, the camera dot blinked. That night, in a quiet that felt earned, Sloan stood by her front window and watched the street. She thought about how love had been defined in her family, sacrifice measured in dollars, not in honesty. She thought about keys, how easily given and how hard reclaimed. When she finally slept, she dreamed of a door that closed and stayed closed. She woke up rested and raw. She made coffee. She booked a therapy session. A boundary is a door with your hand on the knob. She could learn the strength to keep it closed. She could also learn when and how to open it. Not today. Not yet. Freedom, it turns out, is both loud and quiet. Loud in the first 2 weeks, her mother's number calling from strangers' phones, relatives performing concern, aunts leaving messages that sounded like prayers but were actually verdicts. Quiet when the block list grew so long it became a small city. Quieter still when the house settled into the shape of her life without anyone else's shoes near the mat. She went to therapy and said words she'd never allowed past her tongue: parentified, resentment, grief. Love and harm can be roommates, her therapist said. Your work is to choose new tenants. She changed her emergency contact at HR to Bridget, who kept extra bobby pins and opinions in her desk. She started seeing Adrian, who told corny jokes and covered his own half of the check with an ease that felt like air. On their third date, he said, "You don't talk about your family much." She stirred her tea. "I'm learning how to talk about them without lying," she said. He nodded, not pressing. A box appeared on her doorstep on a rain-soft Tuesday. No note. Her mother's neat, unshowy packing inside. The silver handbag, tissue-like breath. The watch in its box, face blank as a moon. Jewelry that chimed a little when she lifted it. Missing pieces of a life returned without confession. She turned the watch over and read the engraving from a decade ago. "Proud of you, sweet girl." The sweetness snagged. She almost called. Almost. Instead, she wound the crown and set the time, the tiny second hand creeping back into a rhythm that had never depended on anyone's apology. An apology letter arrived later, Bailey's looping script like a teenager's. "I'm sorry. Garrett convinced me. You have so much. I was jealous. I'm paying Mom and Dad back. It will take years." Sloane read it 3 times, noticing the word "you" as a mirror, the missing word "I" where action should have been. She put the letter in the drawer with the phone and left both there. Aunt Judith, persistent but kind, called from a number Sloane hadn't blocked. "They're struggling," she said. "Your parents are working part-time. Bailey's at a call center. Garrett is, between things." The old Sloane would have written numbers on a napkin and built a bridge. The new Sloane listened and said, "I hope they learn something and mend it." On a Sunday morning, Sloane opened her windows and let clean air move through the rooms. The camera's red light blinked. She walked to it and, for the first time since the day she installed it, turned it off. Not to pretend nothing had happened, but to stop living in the fear that it would again. She put the keys she now actually needed on a small dish by the door: house, car, mailbox. No spares and bowls anywhere else in the city. She met Adrian at a farmer's market. She bought strawberries and didn't feel guilty. She went home and ate them standing at the counter, juice bright on her tongue. She laughed at something dumb he texted her. She sat on her couch with the watch ticking softly in the quiet. Family, she decided, is not just blood. It is also respect and the absence of theft. It is how people behave when no one is watching and how they respond when someone finally is. Love is not a ledger, but it is accountable. At night, she sometimes watched the door in her mind and felt the ache of what she'd closed herself off from: holidays, shared jokes, the shape of her mother's hand. She let it ache. She did not anesthetize it with auto payments. Morning always came. She made coffee. She walked around her own house. She felt alone sometimes, and then she felt something better, alone and safe. The difference was everything. There will be more boxes maybe. More letters. She won't build a life on waiting for them. The ending wasn't a slam, it was a latch clicking into place. The door works. So does she. If any part of this felt like yours, keep your keys. Keep your kindness. Don't confuse the two.